With Survivor 50 coming out soon, I know some of you may be Survivor fans. Even if you're a newer fan or an older fan, you may not have watched all the seasons. We have a lot of returning players coming back all the way from season 1, and I've watched all the seasons for you. So going into season 50, I can give a quick rundown of all the players involved that are coming back to kind of give their history, what to expect from them, what is the story. A lot of storylines are going to be referenced this season, a lot of callbacks to previous seasons going all the way back to the beginning. If you're a newer fan of Survivor, Survivor's been around just over 25 years. They've had 2 seasons per year, so this is a very big deal with season 50. It's the first returning player season in 10 seasons since season 40. So up to this point, if you just watched it the last few years, all you've seen is all new players every time. So unique about this season, it's going to have a lot of diversity when it comes back to types of players, back when the game was very different back in the beginning. To give a little summary of kind of the history of Survivor a little bit in generic terms, the first 40 seasons or 20 years or so is what's called the old era. That's seasons 1 through 40. The game was 39 days long in most seasons. It sometimes had a lot of different themes. They had a lot of different locations. And it was kind of a capstone season in season 40 called Winners at War that was only winners. After that season, it ended at the time of COVID. They actually did the finale remotely, and this show kind of went on hiatus for about a year and a half. When it came back, it was kind of rebranded as the new era. The game was fundamentally the same with some few key differences. One being it's only 26 days, but they tried to make the suffering a little more intense. They did not give rice to the tribes, things like that. A couple small rule changes. They've emphasized smaller tribes. They've added the shot in the dark, things like that. And they've not had any returning player seasons to kind of freshen the show a little bit, to give all new players for several seasons before they go back to a returning player season, which these seasons can be very popular. It's players that usually people like to watch or have some history. And they've created some of the greatest seasons in Survivor history. So it's an exciting time to have the first one in some time. This cast of 24 players is a little not typical. It's a little larger for a new era type game. It's always been 18 players. Now it's 24. They've not really discussed what rule changes there might be. There's probably going to be a lot of episodes with 2 players voted out instead of 1. So it could be an interesting dynamic. The cast is split up into 12 male, 12 female, but also 12 old era players. So players from the first 40 seasons, and 12 new era players from the seasons from 41 through 49. So just kind of want to go through some of those players, kind of a little brief history, maybe something famous that they're known for, some big event that happened to them. I'm going to go in order as they appeared in Survivor from the beginning. All the way back from season 1, it is Jenna. She was from the Pagan tribe. She was kind of well known as everybody was from that season. The show was a phenomenal success. And so everybody from that first season kind of became instant celebrities. So Jenna was one that was from a tribe that did not do as well after the merge, but she became a popular individual, and she came back in season 8, which was the very first returning player season, Survivor All-Stars. She is the only player that's going to be returning that never has played the game when the game had hidden immunity idols. So the game was very different back then. One famous event that happened with her in season 1, they did not have a family visit yet, kind of similar to what they do now with the new era, but they had VHS tapes that would be shipped to the island for them to play of their family and loved ones. Her family, however, was not able to send their tape, and so her being a single mom, she was not able to see her children. When she played a second time in Survivor All-Stars, she did make it to 3rd place. She kind of was brought along in a popular alliance with Rob and Amber, 2 Survivor legends, Boston Rob, that is to say. She had an alliance with Rupert, also a Survivor legend, but she was kind of seen as kind of an annoying personality a little bit. This has been the longest time between seasons played, though. So I'm sure she has evolved a lot as a person that she was as a young person in her 20s, back when she played in season 8 the last time, to now. So a Survivor legend, more in reputation of going all the way back to season 1, not so much in her ability as a game player per se. but just more as a personality. Next is Colby. Colby is a Survivor legend from season 2, the Australian Outback. He finished in second place and was runner-up and lost by 1 vote. It was somewhat a controversial decision looking back in that he won the final immunity challenge, but chose not to take with him Keith, who was not really well liked by the jury. Instead, he had been in an alliance with Tina. They are still friends to this day because he gave her $1 million by taking her to the end as Tina beat him by 1 vote. He was a Survivor beast back then, but he aged a little bit, of course, when he came back to play later. He played in Survivor All-Stars also with Jenna. They were on the same tribe briefly, but they never went to a tribal council together, so they don't have a lot of history together. He did not do as well that season and was voted out pre-merge. Then he came back his 3rd time for Survivor Season 20, Heroes Villains. That season is going to be referenced a lot because Season 20, Heroes versus Villains, is one of the greatest Survivor seasons of all time. If you only watch a couple seasons before this, I would watch that one along with David and Goliath, Season 37, which we'll get to later. So Colby in that season, though, had lost a lot of his athletic prowess. He was not as dominant in challenges. And one of the quotes from that season was, he was Superman with a fat suit. Now, fast forward to 15 years later, he's now in his early 50s. What is it going to look like for him? I think he's evolved a lot as a person. I think his Survivor philosophy has changed a lot. That's judging from preseason interviews. So it may be interesting to see him and how he handles coming back into the game after so long a hiatus. Stephanie LaGrossa is next. She started in season 10, Survivor Palau. The unique thing about her that season, she was part of a tribe that lost every single challenge. There were 2 tribes that year. Her tribe was whittled all the way down to 1, and she was that 1 surviving member. It was not technically a merge as she just got absorbed into the other tribe, but her hero's journey going through all that defeat and still coming out to make the merge to be absorbed into the other tribe was legendary. The next season, they brought her back in Survivor Guatemala, her and the second person, the final 2 from her tribe. And she was, instead of an underdog, now she was the captain of that tribe. She made it all the way to the final 2. She was a runner-up. The feel of that season was very different for her, whereas no longer was it the underdog story of overcoming big odds to survive in the game. Now she was a favorite. And when she made it to the jury, she was not as well liked, and she lost and was runner-up that season. She also returned for season 20, just like Colby did. She did not make it as far in that season and was not really very popular with a lot of the other players. She has been in some other reality shows, most recently probably Traitors, season 3, I believe. She was on Cirie in that season, and she'll come up later. She was also with Cirie on a show, Snake in the Grass. She did not do as well in those seasons strategically. So it'll be curious to see how she does strategically, if that's still a weakness for her game or not. Next, we want to get to Cirie, who we've just mentioned, Survivor legend. Cirie Fields is by many considered possibly the greatest Survivor player ever who has not won. She was kind of the person that was seen as that character that was just a woman watching TV on the couch and decided to apply for the show, barely survived the first few tribal councils, and then kind of realized she's actually kind of good at this game. That first season, she became very good socially with people, very good strategically. She has a very good mind. She has a way of reeling people in and then knowing when to cut them off and knowing how to play this game very well. She's not a physical player. She has never won an individual immunity challenge. And so that's been kind of a weakness of her game. She came back in season 16, which was at the time called Fans versus Favorites, also called Survivor Micronesia. It was 1 tribe of favorites, returning players, and 1 tribe of fans. She really dominated this season. She was part of a Black Widow Brigade alliance of all females. There was one of the famous events from that season. They manipulated a young man to give up his hidden immunity necklace that he had earned to give it up for someone else, and they then turned around and voted him out. She was the mastermind of that ploy.
Eric thinks he has it. Guaranteed Final 4. Eric wins immunity once again.
wonder if he would give Nat his necklace. Nat, tell him that if he were to give you the necklace, that would redeem him, and we would vote for Amanda.
Who would fall for that? You give me your necklace.
I'm not even going to consider that.
Just hear me out. If you gave me your necklace tonight, Cerise said you'd hands down vote for Amanda. That's all we need.
I want to give individual immunity to Natalie.
My mother always told me, you may not be able to beat him with these all the time, but you can always beat him with this. Sorry.
13th person voted out and the 6th member of our jury, Eric. I think that is what you call a life lesson.
Some people feel she may have been cheated a little bit. The game originally in Survivor, early on, was always a final 2 at the final tribal council. Well, they had shifted to a final 3, and there's a lot of reason that makes for a better final. I won't get into that. That's for another video. But the game had already shifted to a final 3, but she made it to the final 3. But surprise, they decided to go final 2, and she was eliminated and was in 3rd place, a season that she likely would have won if she had gotten to make her case to the jury. She came back for season 20, Heroes Villains. She did not make it as far in that season, but then years later, season 34, she came back for Survivor Game Changers. A famous event happened where she was eliminated without any votes. She was eliminated at an event that's called Advantage Geddon, where the game had probably one too many advantages in the game. In the final 6, there were 3 immunity idols in play from the 3 original tribes that season. None of them had been played yet. They also had an additional legacy advantage that could be passed on if a player got eliminated. It was kind of complicated, but ultimately it functioned as a hidden immunity idol. So 3 people played their idols, and then another person played this legacy advantage. So now 4 people of the 6 were immune from being eliminated. Well, a 5th person also had the immunity necklace from having won that challenge. And so by default, she was the only player of the 6 left that could be voted for. So even though she had no votes against her, she was eliminated by default. Kind of a controversial event. That's why I think since that event, they have tried to scale back quite how many advantages at least give immunity, especially late in the game, to try to prevent something happening like that. She did play one other season outside of the US in Australian Survivor. Australian Survivor has been very popular the last several years. It's very an old school Survivor feel to it. They brought in a few American players for a season this past year called Australia versus the World. It was a shortened game of only 16 days. It was only 14 players, 7 Australian and then 7 from other Survivors competitions throughout the world, 3 from the US. She did very well in that, in her alliances. She really kind of wooed her way and manipulated her way to the game, made it all the way to the fire-making challenge in the final 4, to which she lost and finished in 4th place, but still did very well. If she's able to replicate that success, look out. It's going to be hard to get people to eliminate her because she kind of is a legend. She's never been a physical player, but still one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Next is Ozzy. He played in Cook Islands, a very good season. He was kind of a little Mowgli, if you've ever seen the Jungle Book. He could swim like a dolphin. He could climb up trees. He was just very athletic, very strong. He was in a tribe that was of 6 people. The other tribe was 6 people. They had a mutiny in which 2 tribe members left his tribe to go to the other tribe. So now they're outnumbered 8-4. Well, however, they were able to manipulate their way through that season, so that 4 was actually the final 4 at the end of the game. He lost in the final tribal council by 1 vote, 4-3, and that was the closest he would ever come to win. He has come back 3 times after that, and each time he's probably gotten a little worse. He's not been very good as a strategic player, but still was an athletic, dominant player. He played in season 16, also with Cirie. He was kind of wooed in by a girl who kind of carried him through the game. She did not know about it, but the Black Widow Brigade, headed by Cirie, blindsided him and eliminated from the game. He came back in season 23. That was a season he played with Coach, who will come up shortly. He was captain of one tribe. Coach was captain of the other. That season had a redemption island scheme to it, to where if you were eliminated from the game, you could earn your way back into the game at a couple points in the season. He did that voluntarily and won several challenges to come back into the game. He was a very dominant threat, but however, strategically, his alliance faltered and he made some social and strategic errors in that. Coach famously was able to make John Cochran flip. Coach kind of outmaneuvered him in that season, and ultimately he lost at the end of that season. He came back for Survivor Game Changers, also with Cirie again. He made it to the jury, but strategically he just never really had the chops for that. So it'll be interesting to see how he fares coming back to season 50. He's been active outside the game, had an OnlyFans page for a while, so he's a little different character, kind of goes by the beat of his own drum. So, but still a Survivor legend, not so much for his ability in the game strategically, but more for kind of the history, some of the famous seasons he's been in, and more as a character who was, it used to be when he was younger, very physically dominant in the game. Next is Coach, who we just mentioned. He came in Survivor Tocantins, season 18. He was a character. He came telling all kinds of fantastical stories about going through the Amazon jungle and being captured by indigenous tribes and escaping death, and a lot of stories that were obviously not true, but he told them as if he fully believed them. If you ever want to watch one scene that kind of encapsulates what kind of person Coach was as a player, there's one scene in the episode he was eliminated in. He made it to 6th place in season 18, where he was sent to exile, which in that season, which is a desert, and he chose not to drink any water, and he was there all night long. And he comes to the challenge the next day, just totally dehydrated and suffering, and he barely loses that immunity challenge before he's eliminated from the game. He came back 2 seasons later in Heroes vs. Villains. As a villain, he made it okay into the game about midway through, was not really on the right side of a lot of votes. He tried to do what he could to survive, had a rough go of it overall. He then comes back in season 23 with Ozzy, makes it all the way to the end after he had outmaneuvered Ozzy and his alliance. But because the jury was made up mostly of Ozzy's alliance and tribe, they voted against Coach winning, and he finished in 2nd place, and that's the last time he's played the game. Next is Aubrey. She is also a Survivor legend. You may notice a theme through some of these players that are returning. Anytime historically a player has felt like maybe it was controversial how they lost at the end, or maybe felt like they may have been cheated, Survivor loves to bring these players back. Almost every person you could say maybe could have, should have won, most of them have been invited back into the game. She played first in Survivor season 32, which was 3 tribes, Beauty versus Brawn versus Brains. She was on the Brains tribe. She made it all the way to the final 2, and it was a very controversial decision with a jury that was not very favorable to an intelligent woman, that instead gave it to the pretty girl instead. She was brought back 2 times since, but was not able to replicate that success. She came back 2 seasons later in Game Changers season 34, along with Cirie, along with Ozzy, made it pretty far into the game, but never really found her footing with alliances or with strategy. She then came back in season 38, which was called Edge of Extinction, also a controversial season for some other reasons, but it really had a rough go of it. She was an early boot in that season and didn't make it too far, but she is back again. A little history with her and Q. Q is a player from season 46 we'll talk about later. She'd never played with Q, but Q mentions her as somebody to look out for and somebody that you kind of have to be wary of. So it'll be interesting to see how those two interact with each other, even though they've never played together, but she has been called out by Q from back in season 46. Next, we have Chrissy, season 35. Chrissy was a challenge beast. I believe she has tied the record for most individual immunities by a female, and she carried her alliance all the way through that season, all the way to the final 4. Now, if you've watched Survivor in the last few years, you know that the process is when you make it to the final 4, there are no more votes. You cannot eliminate somebody via vote at the final 4. Before season 35, that was not the case. However, what often happened was you could be in an alliance with somebody who was a really good player, ride their coattails through the game, and right at the end of the game, shove them off the cliff so that you make it to final tribal council and have a better chance to win the game. Survivor changed that rule, understandably so. Now, this is something that is going to come up with the fan vote for season 50 in the hands of the fans of should there be a final four fire making that is mandatory. Now, if it's a tie vote, it'll be a fire making anyway. But could you possibly vote someone out at Final Four? I have always been a strong proponent of it for that very reason. However, I'm kind of okay now with them changing it up. Sometimes the game gets a little stale towards the end where people know if they can just make it to Final Four, they can't be voted out. And so some moves are avoided just for that very reason at that critical 5 to 6 spot in the game very late. And so she was in a dominant alliance. She won the final immunity challenge at the Final Four in an alliance with 3 people, and they were going to vote off Ben, who the jury loved. However, she got information for winning her challenge that said, actually, we're not going to have a vote tonight. We're going to have a fire-making challenge. And the look on her face when she read that note was the moment she realized she actually wasn't going to win. A lot of people feel that she may have been cheated out, not just so much by the rule change, but by the fact that that was kind of kept as a secret from the players until the very end. Ben was able to save himself in a fire-making challenge and defeated her with a jury that liked him. And she finished second place that season. There's not been a returning player season except for season 40 that had winners only. And so this is kind of the first season she's really been eligible to come back. Next, we have season 37, David versus Goliath. If you only want to watch one season before watching season 50, watch David and Goliath season 37. It's all new players, so you don't have to know previous history of any other players from a returning player season. But it is one of the funnest seasons. It has a very quirky, likable cast. One tribe of Goliaths, one tribe of Davids. So in this season, we see Mike White, who you may recognize, famous in Hollywood. He is the creator of the popular TV show from HBO, White Lotus. Now, when he's on the show, he was famous as a Hollywood producer. He had produced a lot of movies, a lot of things before, but this is pre-White Lotus. So he was not quite as popular as he is right now. He was a fantastic player going all the way through the season, all the way to the end. He was kind of underappreciated by the jury. If you rewatch that season, you can almost see how maybe he was a better player than people recognized at the time, but he lost at the final tribal council and finished in second place. Now, one thing also about Mike to note, many of the players he played with that season have made appearances in White Lotus as extras, as characters in the background. And so that's kind of been a rumor. In season 50, is he going to promise people that if they don't vote him out or if they go into an alliance with him, or is he going to maybe get them into season 4 of White Lotus? So we'll see how that plays out. I'm sure it may come up in conversation. One of the most likable characters from that season is Christian. He is a college professor. He is very smart. He is a great narrator of the game in his confessionals. A very quirky individual, very intelligent, very fun to listen to. He made it deep into the game, even won an immunity challenge over one of the Goliaths in historic fashion. He befriended many of the Goliaths as well to get late into the game, but didn't quite win. He did make an appearance in the White Lotus as an extra, as Survivor fans may know if you happen to watch the White Lotus. Also that season was Angelina, who was quite the character. She finished in third place that season. She was what's called a 0-vote finalist. She made it to the end, but did not get any votes in Final Tribal. She was kind of seen as annoying by some of the players. She was accused by the jury of what's called jury management, to where she would vote somebody out, but one time she tried to tell them in advance to maybe get their favor. She was called out for that. She negotiated with Jeff to try to get rice for the tribe by sacrificing her own immunity herself to get the rice. However, she kind of annoyed the other players because she brought that up repeatedly, how she sacrificed for the tribe. Angelina was part of one of the most famous scenes in Survivor history, a very hilarious scene in which she was going to vote out Natalie with her alliance and blindside her, but she was very cold and wanted Natalie's jacket. And so she pretended to not be part of The Blind Side so that maybe Natalie would give her her jacket. Mike White was part of that tribal council in the background, laughing hysterically, trying to bury his face. As Natalie is getting her torch snuffed, Angelina says, "Natalie, can I have your jacket? Natalie, can I have your jacket?" Over and over again, as if she's not heard.
Want Lear size jacket. I'm not sorry. I'm cold. I know it sounds silly, but the elements do have an impact on you. I know that's so wrong. It's so cold out here, and I'm one of those people who runs really cold, and having a jacket out here really could be a huge benefit to me.
Natalie, need you bring me your torch?
Okay.
Oh my God. I just wanted to give you a hug. Natalie, is there any way I could have your jacket? Natalie?
Natalie, the tribe has spoken.
Thank you, Tim.
Natalie?
Time for you to go.
Thank you.
Nothing.
Is it worth $1 million?
Guess not.
Next up is Rick Devens. Rick was part of season 38, also with Aubrey. He was a weatherman, so he was a great narrator. He could speak to the camera. He could speak to the audience. And he was part of that season, made it all the way to the Final Four, and lost in the fire-making challenge at the end and finished in 4th place. He was part of a weird twist that season to where eliminated players could earn their way back into the game, but those in the game didn't know that that was an option. He made his way back into the game and made it late into the game, but was not quite able to make it to the end. He was a very fun player to watch, and so it'll be fun to see him come back and see how he plays this time around. That's all the old era players. Now to go through the new era players, we skip to season 42, and we get to Jonathan. Jonathan, if you only watch one scene of him, he was a beast of a man, and he still is, a very strong character. There was one tribe challenge that he was in that he single-handedly won the challenge for his tribe. He is carrying a ladder through the water. He is pulling his tribe through the water. He is willing them to victory. He is doing all the heavy lifting as a mountain of a man that he is. Jeff Probst said after that that was probably the single most impressive challenge performance he has ever seen. And he's been the same host for every single season. So he was a phenomenal challenge beast. He was actually underrated as a strategic player. He made it all the way to the end. He lost in the fire-making challenge, and so he finished in 4th place. If he had won and made it to Final Tribal Council, it's unknown if he would have won. He could have possibly had a chance. He likely still would have finished in 2nd place, but kind of was underrated as a strategic player. So he's one to look out for this season. Then we get to Dee. Dee was the season 45 winner. She is considered one of the best winners of the new era. She was dominant in challenges, a challenge beast. She also was part of probably the most famous new era alliance, the Reba Four. They were a solid alliance that manipulated their way late into the game. She kind of wooed Austin and used her flirtatious skills to manipulate him and made it all the way to the end with him, and then beat him at the end at the Final Tribal Council. Next is Emily. Emily Flippen was in season 45. She was on a different tribe from Dee, but she was on the Disaster Tribe, the tribe that lost every challenge. She kind of put herself out there very early in the first scene of that season and seemed to be on the chopping block, but somehow survived a few tribal councils, made her way through to emerge, and kind of made it to late in the game, but ultimately fell to a blind side late in that season. She actually was the victim of a hidden immunity idol play that eliminated her. She's had her own evolution in her personal life. She went into that season telling her partner of some time that she was never going to get married. She comes out of that season with a whole different perspective on life. Her and her partner have since been married, and she's a very different individual now. Very likable character, very quirky. One of her faults could be she can be very opinionated in the game, and you kind of have to be flexible at times. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out with all returning players in this season, but a very likable player to watch and to root for. Now we get to season 46. Season 46 has 3 different players in this season. First, we have Charlie. Again, a controversial loser being brought back. Charlie manipulated his way through the game and stayed under the radar, perhaps a little too much, so that when he got to final tribal council, people had not really realized how good of a player he had been. He was in an alliance to the end with Maria, well, almost to the end. Maria was going to blindside him at the final 6, but Charlie was one step ahead of her and actually blindsided her. Now, Maria had immunity for that vote, so it was actually Q, who we'll get to in a moment, who was eliminated with that vote. Even though Charlie had outmaneuvered Maria, who was supposedly their friend, Marie did not vote for him to win the game at the end, and she was the deciding vote. So he loses barely at the end. No disrespect to Kenzie, who won that season. Charlie very well may have played a slightly better game, and Charlie lost in such a very heartbreaking way right at the end, betrayed by his own #1 alliance member. Now, one of the people who voted against him was Q. Q is a television character. I don't know that he has any chance to win this game. He is a great narrator. He always has something funny to say, and he is just kind of a crazy character. A lot of chaos. He had a lot of great quotes in this season. He was a little suspicious when one other contestant said their favorite player ever was Aubrey. And he says, well, we can't have that. So he used that as an excuse to eliminate that player because she said Aubrey was her favorite player. He had other great quotes, I think, in that same episode that you can cancel Christmas if you think I'm going to go along with that. There was a viral moment that season in which Liz did not get invited to an Applebee's reward, in which she screams at the camera with how upset she is. Q was actually the one that prevented her from going on that reward. He was in an alliance with the winner that season, so it's understandable why he voted for her. But technically, he did vote against Charlie to win that season, so it may be interesting to see what their dynamic is. Also from that season is Tiff, or Tiffany. She was in a close alliance with Q, a very big advocate for Kenzie. She made it far in the game, but ended up being blindsided with an idol in her pocket that she did not play. Now, what was a little controversial with her is that she was known for being a very big advocate for Kenzie in Ponderosa. Ponderosa is where all the jury goes to hang out and to rest up while they wait for final tribal council. She was openly campaigning for her alliance member Kenzie to win the game, and even during final tribal council was part of a couple individuals that were putting time limits on people with their answers. Charlie and also Ben, who was the other final 3 contestant, were limited in their answers. They could not give full answers without being time limited by her on the jury. And so it kind of was a question of how much weight did she really carry in influencing enough people to vote for Kenzie. So what her dynamic will be with Charlie, we'll see. And later into the game, or even early, are people going to try to keep her from the jury? Because unless she's pushing for you to win the game, do you want her in Ponderosa trying to convince other people to move the vote in a certain way? So we'll see how that plays out. Season 47 has one player, Genevieve. Now, I will allow my personal opinions to seep into this. Genevieve is a very popular player that year, was seen as a very good player until late in the game in which she was eliminated. I personally feel her game's very overrated. She had a habit of being in an alliance with somebody and blindsiding them, but then, oh no, I have nobody left in my alliance. Why? Well, you voted against them. And the other people who were in your alliance now don't trust you. That's my own personal opinion. However, she was a very popular player with people who watched at home, very likable Canadian. And so it'll be interesting to see if her past blindsides may come back to haunt her. It's kind of scary to go into an alliance with her knowing that she may just be another Black Widow that will burn you in the end. So can people really trust her? Now we get to season 48, which has 3 returning players. Season 48 was not the best of seasons, but we do have 3 popular players coming back. We have the second winner, Kyle, who is returning, a very dominant winner who really had a very hidden alliance with Camilla through that whole season and really manipulated a lot of what Joe and his other alliance member Eva did. Camilla and Joe are also coming back with Kyle. So Kyle was one that made it all the way through the end and was kind of a surprise winner for some of the other people who were there with him, that he really played a very dominant game. He is a master strategist. Looking through some of his preseason interviews, he has kind of a different strategy for a returning player season, and we'll see if he's able to use that to his advantage. With him is his closest alliance member, Camilla, who was in a hidden alliance with him all season. She was a very likable character. Season 48 had a lot of very, very strong players. However, very late in the game, she still was able to win an immunity challenge just by a hair and save herself. She lost at a fire-making challenge and finished in 4th place. If she had made it to the end, a very good chance she would have won. I see them being very close together, probably not on the same tribe, but a very still close alliance there and a close bond with her and with Kyle. Next we have is Joe. Joe was the very strong All-American player from that season. He dominated immunity challenges all the way to the end. He made it and lost in 3rd place with only 1 vote. He was not the best strategic player though. One of the reasons that wasn't the greatest season is not a lot of people made a lot of moves because the dominant alliance was not really seen as a threat to win. He was a part of that. Everybody kind of was okay to go along with him because they knew if they could sit next to him at the end at Final Tribal Council, they probably could beat him, and they were right. Kyle did beat him. So even looking at his interviews since he lost, he still has not fully understood the reasons why he lost. He may have kind of a fundamental misunderstanding of how the strategy of Survivor really needs to play out. A lot of his heroes are kind of the old heroic legends who were always faithful and always loyal. However, the game is not structured that way. It is a game of manipulation, whether you manipulate through lies and deceit or whether you manipulate through forcing people to keep to their honor and integrity to maybe make decisions that aren't in their best interest. He is kind of a player in the new era that played a lot like players way back in the early part of the old era. So not always the best fit. Curious to see how he'll do in season 50. Survivor 49 has 2 players in it. We have the returning winner, Savannah. If you've just seen the last season, you've seen her. Very dominant challenge threat. Did very well in challenges. Not always the most likable character, especially for people at home. It's going to be curious to see how this tribe of returning players treat these season 49 players, because they've not seen all of season 49 when season 50 is filmed. If you go back to season 20, Heroes versus Villains, there was one player, Russell Hantz, who had just been on season 19. Nobody had really seen all of his season. They didn't really know how he played, and he was able to fool all of them because they didn't really know what kind of character he was. I think the ghost of Russell Hantz is going to come back to haunt Savannah and also Rizzo, or Rizgod, the other player from season 49, because since there's not really any tape on him and nobody knows him really well from their season, they might be a threat to be eliminated. Rizgod, or Rizzo, very quirky character. He was able to use an idol and keep that idol and use it to save himself all the way to the end. He's a very quirky, likable guy, very emotional, loves his family. He also lost in a fire-making challenge at 4th place. A lot of these players have lost in 4th place to a fire-making challenge. So if that comes up at the end of this season, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Well, that's a quick summary of all the 24 returning players. So I hope you enjoy season 50. I hope it's a great season. Hopefully that gives you some context. If you want to give some comments to ask other questions about some of these players or your own thoughts and comments, feel free to do such. Thanks, guys.